Go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/online therapy to get 20% off your first month of cognitive behavioural therapy, with weekly sessions online with a therapist, in addition to worksheets, a journal, meditation and yoga videos, and unlimited messaging. There's strong evidence that CBT can help people who hoard, and accessing therapy online can be affordable and accessible. Find out more and get your discount at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/online therapy.
A lot can happen in the next 3 years. Like a chatbot may be your new best friend. But what won't change? Needing health insurance. United Healthcare Tri-Term Medical Plans are available for these changing times. Underwritten by Golden Rule Insurance Company, they offer budget-friendly, flexible coverage for people who are in between jobs or missed open enrollment. The plans last nearly 3 years in some states, with access to a nationwide network of doctors and hospitals. So for whatever tomorrow brings, United Healthcare Tri-Term Medical Plans may be for you. Learn more at uh1.com.
Think of all the sleep hacks you've ever heard. You could spend years trying them all, or you could instantly transform your sleep with Bowl and Branch. They make the softest, most breathable bedding you'll ever feel. And it's all 20% off. That's their best sale of the entire season. Millions of sleepers love their buttery soft sheets, airy blankets, cloud-like duvets, and so much more. And you can try all of them for 20% off with promo code BUTTERY20. So hurry to bowlandbranch.com today. That's BOLL and branch.com. See site for details.
I'm Sandra, and I'm just the professional your small business was looking for. But you didn't hire me because you didn't use LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn has professionals you can't find anywhere else, including those who aren't actively looking for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role, like me.
In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you'll miss out on great candidates like Sandra. Start hiring professionals like a professional. Post your free job on linkedin.com/spoken today.
Welcome to the Overcome Compulsive Hoarding with That Hoarder podcast. I am drowning in stuff and trying to find a way out. Listen as I explore the issues and delve deep as somebody profoundly affected by hoarding disorder. Find out more, including links to subscribe to the podcast, at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk, and find the links there to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and all over the place. So I'm going to start today with another review that one of you amazing listeners have left me. This was left on Apple Finland by someone calling themselves Another Hoarder. They left 5 stars and said, "So glad to have found this. I also have a hoarding problem, and it is so good to hear someone being so open and honest about the issue. The podcaster is really down to earth and brave about having a life full of stuff and is very thought-provoking. There are also really good tips in each programme. Highly recommended to anyone who struggles with keeping hold of material things or cares about someone who does. Many thanks." So, Another Hoarder, I'm sorry, first of all, to hear that you're in a similar situation to me. It's pretty rubbish, but I guess it's good to know each other is out there. That's all I can say. It's good to know we're not alone, and I appreciate every review and every comment, and it's so nice to hear from people, and just so kind. Thank you. So what I'm going to talk about today is why you should stop giving your stuff to people who don't want it. It might sound obvious, but hear me out. So it started, I was reading an article about Ukraine, obviously a very sensitive subject at the moment, devastating situation for people. Lots of people are fleeing their homes, and so lots of people around the rest of Europe are having collections of things to donate to Ukrainians who are fleeing, like clothes and shoes and all kinds of things. And this comes from a really good place. I, too, have been tempted to join in and give some things But in the end, I donated money, and I'm glad I did, because I have just read an article where humanitarian workers are asking people not to send their stuff to Ukraine and to donate money instead, as long as it's to a reputable organisation. So this is an article from iNews, which I will link to in the show notes. And the humanitarian worker speaking to them said, "A lot of people in Europe are really keen to help by sending goods. Please don't do this. Unless there is a very specific request for something like certain types of medicine, money donations are best." She went on to say the transportation costs getting it here with the high petrol prices just doesn't work, and that the cost of transferring goods between countries and the distribution process, getting the right jumper or shoes to the right person, is really complicated. It's time consuming as well, and often takes more time and energy than the goods are actually worth. So she said it's usually much easier to buy items in the countries where they are needed. It's also usually cheaper and helps local markets and economies, helping countries to get back on their feet. She went on to say that driving goods 1,500 miles when they could be bought in bordering countries does not help the appeal's carbon footprint, which is something we do all have to be considerate of. So that got me thinking about hoarders getting rid of their stuff, and how a lot of us do want things to have a home rather than go into the trash. We get attachments to things, or we give things kind of almost a personality, almost an identity of its own, and that makes it really hard to just throw something out. But the fact is, some things will need to go to waste, and other things we might wish they were in good condition and could go to a good home, but they are just realistically not in good enough condition for them to ever have a decent life elsewhere. So I'm going to start by talking about giving things to people. It can be tempting when sorting through your stuff to think, oh, I'll give that to my sister, or I'll give that to that friend, will love this. And the odd bit or two, that is absolutely fine. If you have a friend who loves, I don't know, hippos, and you find a cute little hippo ornament that you don't want anymore, sure, give them the hippo ornament. But what you mustn't do is turn up at her house with 3 bags full of stuff, because what you're doing is not, it might feel like a kind gesture, like you're giving her things, and of course that should be a nice thing. But what you're actually doing is just diverting your stuff through somebody else's home. And she now has the responsibility of sorting out your bags that you should have sorted out yourself. And you feel like you've sorted them out because they're out of your house, but you've just moved them. You've just shunted the problem to your friend's house, and that's not fair on her. She almost certainly has more than enough going on without dealing with things you don't want anymore. It's not fair on other people. I also know from the interview I did with Elizabeth Nelson on here, who is the child of a hoarder, and from reading and research I've done around that since, is that often children of hoarders will get stuff from their hoarder parents, bags and bags and bags, or boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff. And their hoarder parent still wants to keep control of those items, and so gets very protective of the things, even having given them away, will say, you didn't throw away that shirt, did you? You didn't get rid of those books, did you? I hope you still got the ornament that I sent you. And that's unfair as well. I do know, for me, that when I give something away, that's it for me. It's gone, and they can do with it what they will. In the episode I did before Christmas about how to deal with unwanted gifts, I will link to all of these in the show notes if you haven't heard them. But I said that I had had a conversation with my best friend where we had both assured each other that basically if I get her something and she doesn't love it, I didn't want her to feel obliged to keep it. And she said exactly the same back to me. In fact, she said it first. And I wouldn't want her to keep something just because I bought it her. And equally, I wouldn't want her to keep something just because I gave it her if she didn't want it in her home. But it seems that I may be a bit of an anomaly in that respect, and that other hoarders still want to control items even when they're in somebody else's home. And that too is unfair. So don't dump your stuff on your friends and family. But if you do give them things, you've got to let go of that control, because it's not fair on them. They didn't sign up for storing your stuff indefinitely. And it's unfair to expect them to. It just is. I know that might sound a bit harsh, but it's true. Everybody's got their own lives and their own problems, and often their own stuff, without feeling guilty for not handling our stuff correctly as well. Now, another place I often see people advised to take donations to, is charities like animal sanctuaries or women's refuges or refugee centres. So if somebody posts on Facebook, I've got a load of old towels, what should I do with them? Somebody will always say a dog shelter or a cat shelter would love those. Or if somebody has some clothes that don't fit anymore, somebody will say take them to a women's refuge. And it is true that animal sanctuaries, women's refuges, refugee centres, all of that kind of place has needs for stuff. But they usually need quite specific stuff. And if that is old towels, brilliant. If they need old towels and you have old towels, great. But it's unreasonable for you to turn up with 3 bin bags full of old towels when they have a storeroom full of them and have no use for them whatsoever. Similarly, it does a women's refuge no good if you turn up with a bag full of size 8 clothes and everybody's a size 14, or if you turn up with a bag of size 22 clothes and everyone's a size 10. I do know that it feels reassuring to give these things to somewhere where they might be used, but it has to be targeted. You have to give things that they will find genuinely useful, not give things just so that you can put it out of your mind and tick it off as a good deed having been done. So with anything like that, it's really easy to just give them a ring, drop them a message on Facebook or Twitter, and just say, hey, I have some size 8 shoes, could you use them? Or I have some old towels that I'm going to throw out, could you use them? Or I have some kitchen equipment, would one of your residents benefit from that? And if they say yes, then brilliant. That's really exciting, because you get to give your stuff that you no longer need to someone who will use and appreciate it. And that's great. But what these charities don't need is a storeroom full of broken pans and torn clothes and a load of men's clothes if it's a women's shelter, or women's clothes if it's a men's homeless shelter, or like pans for a homeless shelter, unless the kitchen there can use them when they probably need quite big specific pans. Then where's the sense in that? I mean, I know some people who I do know some people in homeless shelters do have somewhere to live at that stage and are getting extra support, but think it through and drop them a line and see if they could use it.
How would you like to look 5 years younger? In a clinical study, people that had volume added with Juvederm Voluma XC in the cheeks perceived themselves as looking 5 years younger at 6 months after treatment. Look younger, feel like you. Add volume for lift and contour in the cheeks with Juvederm Voluma XC. Reverse signs of aging by adding volume to smooth laugh lines with Juvederm Volure XC. For important safety information and to find a licensed specialist, visit Juvederm.com. That's JUVEDERM.com. Not for people with severe allergic reactions, allergies to lidocaine, or the proteins used in Juvederm. Common side effects include injection site redness, swelling, pain, tenderness, firmness, lumps, bumps, bruising, discoloration, or itching. There's a risk of unintentional injection into a blood vessel, which can cause vision abnormalities, blindness, stroke, temporary scabs, or scarring. Talk to a licensed specialist to find out if it's right for you.
Since 2013, Bombas has donated over 100 million socks, underwear, and T-shirts to those facing homelessness. If we counted those on air, this ad would last over 1,157 days. But if we counted the time it takes to make a donation possible, it would take just a few clicks. Because every time you make a purchase, Bombas donates an item to someone who needs it.
Go to bombas.com/ACAST and use code ACAST for 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/ACAST, code ACAST.
I know my local food bank does a collection in my local supermarket, and they occasionally put leaflets in the shopping trolleys saying what they most need and what they don't need. And it's really interesting that every time I see that leaflet, it invariably says, please, no more cans of beans. Because we think, oh, beans are nutritious and they're filling and they're cheap. Let's send all the beans their way. And that is true. Beans are filling and nutritious and cheap. But if everybody has that same thought, then they end up with loads of beans and nothing else. And so the leaflet will say powdered milk or tins, like vegetable tins. You can't give fresh stuff to our food bank, at least. I'm sure there are some that you can. But it's all packet stuff that will last. And I think that highlights as well that we think we know what we're doing when we buy 5 extra tins of beans and put them in the food bank collection on the way out of the shop, when actually we're just causing our very own tinned bean mountain that helps nobody. So another place you need to think before dumping your stuff is charity shops. Now, obviously, charity shops live and die by the donations they get. They need a regular supply of donated goods that they can sell to raise money for the charity. So it's win-win for you and for them to donate stuff. You get rid of it, they get to sell it, they get money, you get a good feeling, and all is well with the world. I have donated plenty to charity shops, and I intend to continue to do so. I've also bought plenty from charity shops, which is part of the problem. I have to be very strict these days and just walk in with my donation bag and walk out again without looking at a single thing on sale. And so giving to charity shops is good, but not giving indiscriminately. Because giving indiscriminately looks like sending them a t-shirt with a curry stain on that you've never been able to get out, or some trousers that have torn at the thighs, or some boots that barely have any sole anymore. S-O-L-E, sole. In case you thought I meant like spirit. Because again, what you're doing is shifting your stuff to being their problem. And again, it's just not fair. That's what it comes down to. You might feel relieved that it's out of your house, but all you've done is direct the exact same problem to someone else. Now, I did have a query about donating stuff that can't be sold, because I had always heard that you shouldn't. And then somebody told me, in fact, I think it was Elizabeth Nelson on the interview with the Child of a Hoarder episode I did, said, oh no, they can sell stuff in bulk to textile recyclers, so they still get money even if it's something they can't sell in the shop. So I emailed 2 charities in the UK that have charity shops to see what they thought. And I said, hi, I have a bit of a strange question. I have a podcast for people with hoarding disorder and have heard conflicting things that would affect the advice I give to compulsive hoarders in the UK. On the one hand, I hear that even if you send something to a charity shop that cannot be sold because, for instance, it's a shirt with a tear, then the charity shop can still sell it by weight to textile recyclers. On the other hand, I see videos on TikTok with charity shop managers holding up torn clothes that have been donated, saying, "What are we supposed to do with this?" I do not want to encourage hoarders to give unsellable items to charity shops. That just means it goes in the shop's bin instead of the individuals. But equally, if the shop can earn some money, even with torn clothes, that should be encouraged. I'd appreciate your advice. So, the first shop that got back to me was Sue Ryder. Link in the show notes. They say, "Hi, thanks for getting in touch. We are able to sell items that cannot be sold in our shops to textile recyclers and get a small income per kilogram." So that sounds promising. But then I also emailed the same question to Oxfam and they had a different answer. So they said, "Thanks a lot for your email and don't be concerned. Your question is common. I appreciate you checking with us. Recycling textiles and other items always incurs a cost to Oxfam, so we discourage donations which are not sellable. However, you could direct your listeners to recyclenow.com. It's a long link, so I will link to it in the show notes. They can easily find their nearest textile recycling location there. Another recommendation you could give is to use the donation bags which are delivered through the letterbox. Charities receive a small amount of money per kilo of textiles donated in the bags." So, contradictory information there, which represents presumably that the two organisations do their business in a slightly different way. And so if you have things that can't be resold to be worn, I would recommend a couple of things. First of all, that link that I'm going to put in the show notes to recyclenow.com/what, again, I'm not going to read it all out, but tell you where to find recycling for textiles there. The other is just to ask the individual shop. If you want to donate it to Oxfam, don't. If you want to donate it to Sue Ryder, do. But there are many, many charity shops, so give them a ring and say, "Are you able to sell unsellable clothes to textile recyclers, or does it cost you money?" Because ideally, they can sell it to textile recyclers. And again, all of you benefit. You benefit by getting rid of the stuff. They benefit by getting a few pence. And hopefully the recyclers benefit by recycling it. And then the world benefits. But if they can't resell to recyclers, then you're doing two things. One is costing them money, because they then have to pay for that waste to be taken away. And the other is, again, you're just shunting your stuff from A to B. And the thing to remember, it's not just that you're making it somebody else's problem. And this is the case with whether you're giving to friends and family, whether you're donating to services, or whether you're donating to charity shops. It's not just that you're making it somebody else's problem. It's that it's going to end up in landfill anyway, so you may as well just have done that yourself. If you give it to your brother and he puts it in the bin, then it's in the bin. If you give it to an animal shelter and they put it in the bin, then it's in the bin. If you give it to Oxfam and they put it in the bin, then it's in the bin. So the key is to put it in the bin yourself and not force other people to be part of this dysfunctional chain, because you're creating work and costing people money. And I know that all sounds harsh, but these are things that we have to be aware of, especially if we're at a stage where we are trying actively to de-hoard our homes. I might be making it sound straightforward and easy, and I absolutely do not think it's straightforward and easy. I don't find it straightforward and easy myself. It's so complex and so difficult, and the agonizing I know that we all do over the most unlikely things. People don't get it. And I do get it because I live it. But I also don't want to give us all a free pass and say, well, it's difficult for us, so other people should be inconvenienced as well, because nobody gains, nobody benefits, and it just spreads the misery a bit when what we need to be doing in these difficult times is spreading a bit of joy. If you want to donate something but realistically you know it's no good, think really hard about the chain that item will go through and whether it will just end up in the trash anyway. If you're going to give it to someone who gives it to someone else, who gives it to someone else, who puts it in the bin, then you may as well have put it in the bin yourself. And it feels incredibly hard as a hoarder to put something in the bin, because we have this imagination and this way of looking at items that can find potential uses everywhere. But if you're living in a hoarded home, you don't have the time or the space or the capacity to put all of these ingenious creative projects into action. And some of the things do just have to go. In just 1 second, I'll give you my top tip of the week. In the meantime, please do subscribe to the podcast, review it, 5 stars would be amazing, and share it with your friends or anyone who might be interested or who might benefit from it. It all really helps. To find more ways to support the website, the podcast, and my overall de-hoarding project, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support. Now, back to your top tip. So my top tip this week is to try to be specific when you set goals. If you say, I will get 3 bags out of the house, that's easier to achieve and easier to measure than I'll get some trash out. Because then you don't really know if you've achieved it. It's easy to fudge and you might not achieve as much as if you said 3 bags or 8 bags or whatever your personal goal is that day. Be specific, because then you can hold yourself more accountable. Okay, thank you for listening, and I will speak to you next time. Thank you for listening to the Overcome Compulsive Hoarding podcast. You can find more online at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. You can find me on Twitter at @thathoarder and on Facebook at Overcome Compulsive Hoarding with That Hoarder. To find out more about how you can support this podcast and the overall project, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support and do subscribe to this podcast so you make sure you don't miss any future episodes.
Now on Broadway, An Enemy of the People is a New York Times critic's pick. Jeremy Strong is one of the great actors of his generation, hails the Chicago Tribune. In a performance the Wall Street Journal praises as powerfully affecting and bitterly funny. Michael Imperioli sets off sparks, cheers The Hollywood Reporter. Victoria Pedretti is luminous, raves variety. From director Sam Gold and playwright Amy Herzog, An Enemy of the People is urgent, electrifying, and haunting, declares USA Today. An Enemy of the People, on Broadway through June 16th only.
Hey everyone, Craig Robinson here. I want you to check out the Ways to Win podcast, brought to you by Ford and the new 2024 Ford F-150 truck. On Ways to Win, Coach Cal and I will discuss leadership lessons we've learned. We know all about the days spent perfecting your craft outside of the limelight and have knowledge to share about how strength, inspiration, encouragement, and adaptability are the key ingredients to drive toward your dreams. And those same ingredients can be found in the new 2024 Ford F-150 truck. So check out my podcast, Ways to Win, and also check out the new 2024 Ford F-150 truck. Learn more at Ford.com. Built Ford tough, built Ford proud.
When you make decisions for your company, you look for the no-brainers. If you have a lot of mailing to do, Stamps.com is the ultimate no-brainer. Use the Stamps.com mobile app to mail everything you need to keep your business running with up to 89% off USPS and UPS. Make the same no-brainer decision as over 1 million other businesses with Stamps.com. Use code PROGRAM for a special offer. That's Stamps.com, code PROGRAM.